Hey everybody, Joey Starr here for another episode of Starr Quality Kitchen. That's right folks, welcome back. Today we're going to keep things kind of simple by throwing together a meal that's as easy to make as it is delicious. A popular dish among myself and my siblings was when my mom made pepper steaks. So I'll focus on making just that, and then we will apply what we learned in previous videos to just bring it all together. This isn't really something that you'd have trouble figuring out on your own, but I just wanted to demonstrate one of the many ways that you could apply what you've learned on this channel into a quick and tasty plate. Now, typically for a Meddie family, red meat's only served about once, maybe twice a week, but this is a special occasion as we now have enough under our belts for a nice dinner. So let's get to it. So here's what we're gonna need. So I'm gonna show you the bare bones version of this recipe because it's so easy to make and it's so customizable. In fact, I'd even go as far as say that it was rare that my mom made it twice the same way. So one of the most important ingredients is, of course, pepper steaks. Now, I don't know about you or where you live, but I've been finding in the last few years, especially the past year or so, that it's become much more difficult to find pepper steaks in your supermarkets, even your local groceries. I know that I can go to ShopRite's butcher or a butcher in another store or just to a butcher period and say, hey, I'd like some pepper steak cuts. Or I can just buy some flank steak or even a skirt steak and kind of cut that up. It doesn't come out as well anyway, but the idea of this meal, the reason why my mom would make this at times is simplicity, time, and flavor. So if I'm going to go through all these extra steps based on the shape of the meat, well, it almost defeats the purpose of making it. Per the creation of my mom's version of this, I'm using what I have at hand. So in the case of the supermarket, I started getting a boneless beef round that's cut up for stir fry. This might sound counterintuitive, but it's almost as if the cheaper cuts of meat like round and flank and skirt tend to work best for this recipe. Like if you use something a little better, like say London broil or something, it's not going to be as enjoyable as this is. I'm happy to use my stir-fried beef. Other key ingredients: got some chopped onion. I have it cut into small bits. You can really make your onions kind of any way you want as long as the pieces aren't huge. I personally like them about this small because as I cook it, when I get to the point where the meat's added, the onions, they almost disappear. Like you'll still see some, but a lot of it just kind of melts into the ether of the sauce, which to me makes it fantastic. But it's a preference. You're gonna find as you make this over the course of a few times that you'll like your onions a certain way when you make it. Ditto on the tomatoes. This is very, very important. This is a huge part of the flavor. The combination of onion and tomato together. I make the pieces here about the same size as I make my onion. And finally, it's really hard to imagine pepper steaks without peppers. Come on. At default, green peppers cut about maybe slightly bigger than how I cut my tomatoes or in the onions, but smaller is fine, larger is fine. And honestly, you can get away with slices too. You can cut them similar to how you would make sausage or peppers. And it'll still be pretty good, but it's gonna alter the way you cook them a little bit. So I suggest smaller is better. You can use other peppers, other bell peppers, and it's gonna come out really good, but bare minimum, green pepper. I have made this with yellow peppers, red bell peppers, all different kinds, and pretty much no matter what, it's gonna come out delicious. If you have these three ingredients, hell, if you have just these two ingredients to go with your beef, no matter what, it's gonna be tasty. And anything you add to that is just changing your flavor profile to what you like. Other items you can use: minced garlic, cut up some mushrooms. Oh, one more ingredient, which I forgot to take out. This is again flexible, but I'm gonna use pure vegetable oil. Mom usually used vegetable oil. Sometimes she would use canola oil. Canola oil is one of her favorites. Let's get going here. So I'm gonna use a nice sized pan to stir fry with. What you wanna do is you wanna set your stove to a medium heat. I like to let the pan heat up before I add my oil. About a minute or so. Very important too, not only to get the best flavor, but also to tie this together to other videos I've shown you how to cook this stuff. No, not whipped topping. Tempero pronto. So now my pan is warmed up enough. I'm going to add some of my oil. Now the amount of oil you add is going to depend on the amount of ingredients that you plan on putting in here. For the amount that I have here, I put approximately a tablespoon. Cook your vegetables first. I like to dump in my onions first because they kind of take the longest to get to the point where I want them. This is just a preference, but I typically wait until I start to hear the slightest hint of a sizzle before I add the next ingredients. Just kind of spread these out a little bit so that they cook kind of evenly. Just starting to hear a sizzle now. So next I'm going to add my green pepper. Similar reasoning in that the pepper takes a little bit longer to cook than the tomatoes do. Add that in there now. And now Rachel's gonna help me just kind of mix this up a little bit so I get somewhat kind of even distribution between the onion and the green pepper. And you know what else I'm gonna do once I'm done doing that is, after about a minute or so, your green pepper is gonna start gaining a little bit of the glistening. That's when you add your cut up tomato. And like before, I'm just going to kind of mix this up until I get a somewhat even distribution of tomato among my already evenly distributed green pepper with onion. So you should have a nice sizzle going right now, hopefully. You'll want to kind of stir here, kind of like you're stir frying a bit. When your onions start to become translucent and your green peppers start to look a little softer, and yes, they do take on a certain look when they get softer, and your tomatoes will start to become more tender too. Again, you're going to know this because the tomatoes, they're going to just start to take on kind of like a fuzzy appearance. And I'll show you what I mean when mine is ready to do so, which is going to be in a minute. So kind of like this, get a bit of a close-up here. I don't know if you can kind of see like the tomatoes and the green pepper both starting to get a little bit of a softer, fuzzier look, and my onions are starting to become a bit translucent. So now's the time that we're going to add our beef. If you like your vegetables to be a little more firm by the end of everything, then you'll want to add the beef maybe a minute or so sooner. If you like your vegetables super soggy, super duper tender, like practically liquefied, then you'll cook it longer. But what you want to avoid, if you can, is letting the onion burn, because not only is it going to really stink, but you're going to taste some of that burn in your beef, and you don't want that. So that's what you want to be leery of. If you're going to cook it longer than I do, be careful not to burn your onion. So I'm going to add in my beast, and I'm going to just kind of break these apart a bit. I'm not worried about the even distribution at this moment, but I'm going to add my tempero pronto. Like before, the amount you use is going to depend on the amount of beef that you have and other ingredients. So in this case, I'm going to add approximately a tablespoon and a half. And I'm going to just kind of mix that in there. The goal here when mixing the tempero pronto with your beef is you want to, as much as possible, evenly distribute the tempero with the beef or carne. Now this next step depends on your tempero. If you feel like your tempero is really salty, then there's no need to add anything else to this. If you feel like your tempero is a little on the weak side when it comes to the salty and you want this to be a little more savory, then you can add salt and pepper, or if my tempero is salty enough, I like to add some adobo. Adobo? Yeah, that's what I said, adobo. And now I'm going to mix that adobo in here so that it's mixed nicely with the tempero and the carne. When your beef is starting to look more brown than red, this is the point where you're gonna try to spread it out, distribute the beef as even as you reasonably can with the green pepper, onion, and tomato that you have in here, which is starting to smell amazing at this point. And the reason why I say as reasonably as possible is because obviously your beef is at a much bigger size than your cut up vegetables. No matter how you cut them, the beef is going to be bigger no matter what. One of my mom's secrets in this, she didn't tell me this, but I saw her do it. What you want to do is you want to get yourself a lid that will cover all of this. I have one that I know fits this pan, and we're just going to take a little bit of water, just a little bit. You don't want to flood this thing. You just want to add a little bit in there, and the reason why is one of the things that makes this so tasty when it's all done, besides that your vegetables are soft and melting, picking up all the flavor from the beef, and the beef is picking up the flavor from the vegetables. By adding that bit of water and adding this here, you're slightly stewing the beef, and that's kind of the case. When you get to this point, you're adding the lid. I would maybe lower this down to about 5 if yours on 6. Now about halfway with the flame, maybe a little bit less actually. And I would check this every 3 to 5 minutes, because what you want to be careful in doing is you do not want to overcook your flank. When it gets a little too well done, is that it's going to start getting too firm and rubbery. You don't want that. You want to keep them tender and tasty. So when it's done, your stuff should basically look like this here. The way I make it is that I'll cook this until I don't see any more pink, and then you'll notice here, you'll see the juices underneath. They've taken on some of the color from the green pepper and the tomato and onion. Nice little orange yellowish color to it. And about half the onion I put in there is just kind of melted and dissolved into everything else, which is what you're looking for. And I'll tell you right now, this sauce, the way I just cooked it like this, the way the veggies and the beef are kind of stewed in there, that sauce is money right now. Now, I've kept it off camera because I wanted the focus to be on this deliciousness here, but I've also already made myself the other parts of the dish. And now I'm going to see how to apply it to some of the stuff that you watched in previous videos. So hopefully you watched. If you didn't watch, I'm going to have a playlist ready that'll have all these together in one playlist, so you can just kind of watch through them. Let's throw our meal together. Voila! Here's my dish. Check it out. I got my rice, got my black beans, have this tasty, delicious stir-fried pepper steak that we just made. Added some sweet corn for another vegetable because as Mediterraneans, we love to have multiple vegetables in our dishes. The more the merrier. In cases where we cook stuff with our beef, we don't really count that as meeting the requirement for one of our vegetables. Minimal 2 vegetables is pretty standard. And when I made this plate, I made sure to drop some of that delicious sauce that I was talking about before onto the top of the rice. You can kind of see here, this rice is saturated with it, which is the way I like it. Now, your ratio of meat to other foods, it's up to you, buddy. This is all preference, all right? So let's give the old taste test. First of all, the aroma here, granted I have a couple different aromas going because I have this food that I made also, but the beef itself, you can smell the savory notes that come from cooking this with the tempero pronto. And of course, there's a strong aroma coming from the green pepper and onion in particular. To touch this, I'm gonna just kind of pick one up. Nice, tender, and visually, I mean, this is pretty, right? You got your different colors. You got the beef color, the red, the green, the white, and of course, my plate also includes a little darker color, lighter color, rice color. So let's easily stab into this meat with my plastic fork. It shows you how tender it is. I'm not getting much of resistance here. Let's try some of the beef by itself. Chewy, savory, tender, delicious. And might I add that the flavor, it's not smacking you in the face like, hey, taste me and nothing else. It kind of blends nicely with other things. I'm gonna try some of the stewed vegetables here. Got some green pepper, a little tomato essence, a bit of onion. Veggies are very tender, melt in your mouth. You don't even have to chew those vegetables at all. Now let's try some of the rice with just the juices in there. And this is what I was talking about. That sauce, I mentioned that it's money. It's money when it's soaked up by your starch, in this case, my rice. If you really wanted to, you can add this to, like, say, maybe some egg noodles or mashed potatoes, whatever it is, that sauce, it's gonna enhance your side starch. It's just gonna bring all that flavor to it. A little bit of those vegetables now with the rice. And I guess I'm gonna pick up some of this bean because that's what the universe wants. This is a pretty good bite. Pairs very well with the beans because remember when I made my bean recipe that I included some onion and some other stuff that's common to these other ingredients. Very natural pairing. Let me get some bean or corn with my rice. This is sweet corn. The snap from the sweet corn plus the sweetness. Nice contrast to the savory taste of the tempero that's in the sauce that we made here, and of course in the beans. So let's get a little bit of the beef with the rice here. A little bit of bean. There we go. Nice mixture bite. Yeah. This is one of those dishes that you have such a nice variety of flavors pairing well together that if you're not eating it on camera like I am, you're gonna devour this sucker. And you're probably gonna want a whole nother plate of it. So now, I've taken a few bites. I'm talking to you about this. I'm holding off from digging into this because it's salivating now as we speak. So let's wrap it up, all right? Simple pepper steak, or in this case, stir-fried beef cuts, fried up with some onion, tomato, green pepper, tempero pronto. That small handful of ingredients and a bit of vegetable oil makes a delicious protein for you to have as part of a much larger, delicious plate. Thank you so much for watching Starr Quality Kitchen. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and stalk. Laters. Yeah, this brings me back home.